Hello, everybody. My name is Tony Belsino. I'm a staff member of the Department of Public Service, and we're here today to talk to you about reforming the energy vision. It's a proceeding. Can everyone hear me, first of all?
Yeah.
All right. It's a proceeding of the commission. So we, first of all, want to thank the folks here at the library for having us. So we can come and talk. Thanks to the City of Buffalo for having us out, and thanks to you folks for coming out and listening to what we have to say. And hopefully we can get you some good information and answer any questions you might have about the proceeding. I'm going to go ahead and say, go ahead and raise your hand, interrupt me whenever you'd like, and ask your questions rather than try to wait to the end. We'll go ahead and get right on it. Okay. A little bit about the Public Service Commission and the Department of Public Service. First, the commission also attempts to stimulate markets through support of innovative services and products to make the delivery of energy better and more suited to the customers who actually use it. So reforming the energy vision is New York's comprehensive approach to develop a cleaner, more reliable, more resilient, and affordable energy system for New Yorkers. It will include groundbreaking regulatory reform, and we expect this proceeding to have impacts on pretty much all utility customers. So we've been very active in trying to get out to programs like this so we can inform the public of what we envision happening through this proceeding, and also to get a lot of feedback. Eleanor, do you have some statistics on how much public input we've had so far?
Hi, my name is Eleanor Stein. I'm very happy to be here and to meet you. I'm glad to see Push is here. We've done a lot of work with Push. They've made a big contribution to this program and others, as have other community groups. So we've had a very open process. So far we've had over 800 public comments have been filed with the Commission on this case, and we've had about 600 people involved in working groups early in the case to try to solve some of the problems of what kind of resources like solar energy, storage, combined heat and power do we actually have in New York, and what would be a good way to structure this new market. We have had 300-400 people at every meeting we've had about the case, and we have a number of public seminars that are planned to take place over the next 2 or 3 months. So I hope you can keep in touch with us and get that information on our website or directly. We have cards, and there's information being given out by Scott in the back of the room. So there's a lot of public meetings. It's a very public conversation, and we want to make sure that you get a chance to contribute.
Are those slides easy to see? Or should we turn down the lights? Down the lights?
Yeah, turn on the light, yeah.
If you would, please. So the red proceeding is a commission proceeding. It's part of a comprehensive strategy. We also are looking to evolve the state programs, the energy efficiency programs, and the clean energy programs. So right now, NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research Department, Energy Research Development Authority, has a proposal in front of the Commission for a clean energy fund. The Commission actually has asked them to supplement that, so we're expecting them to file that in the next few weeks or a month or so. There's also the New York Sun program, which is a governor-initiated program that supports solar PV and is pushing for very high installation levels of solar PV distributed throughout the state. And then there's the New York Green Bank, which is the country's largest green bank, which is designed to take customer funds that are collected through your utilities and leverage those funds so we can expand the amount of clean energy and the amount of energy efficiency that's being installed in New York. As successful as the commission-run programs and the state-supported programs have been, we're going to need an order of magnitude larger, at least, for installation of distributed energy resources, demand management resources, and clean and greener energy in order to meet the carbon goals that have been set at the federal level, at the state level, and that are probably coming out in the state energy plan, which is, again, soon to be out. The Green Bank will take those public funds and leverage them through private investment to try to get up to the scale that is going to be necessary for the development of this cleaner and greener energy system. So the consumer experience today, it's pretty much a one-way street. You get your electricity from the utility. Your usage and cost information is usually provided about once a month. Some of the utilities actually provide them, some of their customers only, a bill only once every 2 months. And electricity and information pretty much flows in one direction. They send you the electricity and they send you the bill at the end of the month. They do have 800 numbers, so I'm sure some of you called them and sent some information the other way, but for the most part, it's a one-way street. The consumer experience of tomorrow, this is a great little video that is actually going to work for the first time. And really what it's demonstrating is a more distributed system where there's much more participation as far as generation and managing consumers' energy use in a way that will be coordinated, highly coordinated on an integrated grid. You can see the very large and polluting central generation plant. That's pretty much what we have today. We have very large generators. They're centrally located in the system. And what we're looking to do, and along those transmission lines, the power flows, and from here on in it gets into a commercial for these guys, so I'm going to skip the rest of it. We're trying to, so solar panels will be on folks' houses, there'll be storage, and there'll be other distributed resources that'll need to be coordinated on the grid. And all of these systems and technologies, hopefully, it's our goal to have more customer choice and have customers have more options and more access to both information and resources in order to manage their energy use. So again, this is the industry today. Average electricity bills are increasing. The infrastructure is aging. It'll take substantial developments just to maintain current capabilities. And extreme weather has highlighted the importance of a reliable and resilient electric system. Yes, sir.
So you're really just looking at the electric system. You're not looking at, say, heating, natural gas, or gasoline. This is focused on electricity.
The particular REV proceeding is focused on electricity. Absolutely, you're right. However, there are other programs that involve natural gas and heating that will all be part of the comprehensive program for carbon reduction and greener energy in general.
You mentioned weather, so weather really isn't relevant.
Well, by
Electricity.
extreme weather, I think we mean hurricanes, snowstorms that tend to take down the distribution and transmission system. But it's also extremely hot weather, which creates very high peaks, which stresses the system out. And we'll get into the importance of peak load in just a couple of slides. And then the last slide here, the central generation facilities we were just talking about are increasingly dependent on natural gas for electric generation. So part of REV would be to reverse that trend and have more diverse resources, more fuel diversity, and more resource diversity. So peak demand on the system is when we're using, as a group, when the system's transporting and distributing the most electricity that it ever does. That only happens for a few hours each year, but the entire system has to be built to handle that peak. So this system efficiency is how much we use the system on a regular basis versus it's only used for peaks. So again, because we're building out this system, that's some of it is only used a few times a year. Those portions of the system can get very expensive. So they have to be maintained throughout the year for when those peak moments happen, and we all pay for that. But again, they're only providing services for a few hours of the year. And flattening energy usage in the 100 hours of the greatest peak could save the state $1.2 billion. So that gives you an order of magnitude, or an understanding of the order of magnitude, of how important increasing system efficiency can be. Any questions on peak demand or system efficiency? I started a little bit there, so I think I confused myself. The status quo. Current regulatory framework does not encourage innovation and relies too heavily on traditional business models. Utilities are not adventurous companies. They tend to do things the old-fashioned way, and in large part because they've been regulated the old-fashioned way. So we're trying to change that. So today, with or without the Commission, there are increasing opportunities, in large part because of new technology and lower cost technology, for consumers to manage and use energy more to the way that suits their lifestyle, more to the way that suits what they want and need from the energy system. Some of those opportunities are storage, solar PV, energy efficiency, demand management or demand shifting, again to reduce that peak and push some of your energy use into other parts of the day to increase the system efficiency. In the future, if REV is successful, all of these distributed resources will be able to provide, many of them will anyways, be able to provide services and energy back to the grid. And we expect that those services and energy and benefits that are pushed back onto the grid from the distributed resources, that they'll be paid, they'll be compensated in an appropriate manner for benefits that they're producing. And folks who use the grid and create costs for the grid will be charged for those costs. Some of the peak demand reduction that is already happening now. There's a lot of New Yorkers that have smart thermostats. There's thermostats on some of the tens of thousands of air conditioners down in New York City that the utility can actually cycle those air conditioners off during peak or emergency conditions. Usually they cycle them off for such a short period of time that the customer doesn't notice at all, and there's very little impact that you might hear the actual thing go off, but there's very little impact with comfort because they'll cycle it back on before the living space gets too warm. But allowing them that control reduces the peak, increases system efficiency, and lowers costs for all of us. And the Commission recently ordered other utilities, other than those in New York City, to develop demand-managed tariffs or demand management, demand reduction programs for other areas of the state. And I mentioned this before, as the platform gets fully built out and developed, customers will be able to use the resources that they've installed behind the meter to either reduce their electricity use, provide energy to the grid, provide other services to the grid, and be compensated appropriately for that. The proposed market structure will integrate new electricity resources into the grid in a way that ensures reliability and efficiency. It'll enable participation by companies and customers who want to provide solar, storage, electric storage, peak demand reduction, home energy management, energy efficiency, are all considered distributed energy resources that have significant benefit to the grid and to the public in general. Again, customers can get paid as electricity producers do today. If you're producing electricity and you're pushing it onto the grid, and the grid needs the electricity at that point, you should be compensated for it. A new platform will coordinate all of these activities and technologies using up-to-date technologies to coordinate. So sometimes when we talk about a residential customer becoming a seller of energy, we don't expect you to sit home and watch the energy price go up and have to make a phone call and say, I want to sell a kilowatt hour today. Most of this stuff will be automated. If not all of it will be automated, and the systems will hopefully run themselves. in large part.
Before you move on,
Sure.
I think this might be a good place to talk about the role of community energy providers, not just individual customers.
Okay. I can do it. Eleanor asked me to mention, or to highlight the fact that when I'm talking about customers, I'm not just talking about individual customers. Not everyone has resources to, or not access to a workable solar site or a workable wind site. So part of our vision includes community or aggregated resources, whether they're owned by the community, whether they're owned in common. We don't know exactly what those structures will be. We're looking for ideas, so if you have some, please let us know, either in written comments or today. But we're looking for mechanisms that allow everyone access to these distributed energy resources, and whether it's through ownership in a share, like you could own a share of the resource, or whether the way the resources are set up to benefit a specific community that, again, came up with the idea and developed the resource. Anything you want to add?
The University of Buffalo has done this for them. They've had solar and combined with
Okay. Eleanor just mentioned the University of Buffalo is doing that now. They have quite a bit of solar, and they have combined heat and power as well. So they generate quite a bit of their own electricity. Go ahead, sir.
You mentioned that in New York City, they can turn on and off the air conditioners to reduce the peak demand.
For participants in that program, yes.
For people who sign up to that rate. But, so you don't see using the prices as a mechanism to do that? It's someone makes a decision rather than a price signal?
I think we envision both. Right now, the utility is in control of that. But we expect customers who may not be in a large utility program like that to have either equipment or some sort of way to monitor the price and react to that price, and if it gets too high for them, then they would shut their equipment off. Or if they have generating equipment and that price gets high, they might want to flip the equipment off. Right now, we time of use rates, where the rate that you pay or get compensated for are not widely subscribed to in New York. I'm going to interrupt for just 1 minute and welcome another commissioner of ours, Greg Sayre, who just showed up, so we want to thank you for being here. I saw another question.
Are those customers compensated in any way that are involved in that program downstate with the reset back on thermostat?
They were compensated to participate in the program. I don't know exactly the details.
Excuse me. They receive a fixed annual amount of compensation for that program. There are some other programs that involve slightly different things where there are per event compensation. So the way that one works right now is a fixed annual compensation.
What's that? They gave me the air conditioner?
Yeah, I believe the air conditioners with the technology equipped were given to the customers for free.
Let me just add a word about the time variable pricing, which I think is what you were raising. And this is something which is available in New York in some areas on a limited basis, where you can choose to use, let's say, wash your clothes at midnight, is the classic example. But we're looking into the issue of how much more widely it could be available. And it's certainly one of the instruments by which people can participate in this program and take control over the use of energy. And there's going to be a seminar on this issue in the city at the end of March. And I hope it'll be webcast. So keep an eye on our website. It'll be announced there with a lot of utilities from around the country who've had experience with that type of use pricing and a discussion of the pros and cons. But it's certainly one of the tools.
Thank you. One other point on this slide. Currently, the staff straw proposal that's out there right now that we've solicited comments on proposes that the utility serve as the platform provider to coordinate the distributed resources. Any questions about that? We also envision a new marketplace that will bring customers together and provide new products and services.
Question, there's a question.
Oh,
Can you say what that means?
what means?
The platform.
The platform?
Serve as the platform provider. Can you tell us what that means?
I will do my best. Right now, the utilities own the distribution wires and the substations. They would continue to own that, and they would continue to operate it as part of the platform provider. They would also be responsible for long-term planning of that system. And then, as they build out, this does not exist yet, the ability to coordinate, hundreds of thousands of distributed resources in an economic way and an efficient way, the utilities would be building out systems to enable them to do that as well. So it's those primary things. They'd still be responsible for providing, for, say, companies' books a little bit riskier than we would in the we don't like innovation, we don't like anything new paradigm that we've been living. But as these markets develop, we expect increased oversight, particularly for those concerns where the utility, because of their monopoly on the distribution system, if they were to abuse that as in their coordination of the distributed resources, or otherwise not be meeting the objectives of the Commission will maintain oversight and authority to push them back in the right direction.
And I think one example of that is, as an example I gave, when a company comes in and says, we need a new substation, the Commission might really start looking hard at them in every case and saying, well, have you really checked if there's a way that you could avoid the substation through things like energy efficiency and renewables? And ideally they'll be doing that on their own, but the Commission will absolutely, and the staff will actually also act as a check to make sure that they're doing it. We have one in the front and one back there.
Yeah, on this whole issue of providing financial incentives for the utility to save energy or reduce demand, I just want to point out that before the electric industry in New York was deregulated in 1997, there were incentives in place to do this. And they would appear on the bills of larger users and I guess be embedded in everyone's bills. And the mechanism was called the Demand Reduction Adjustment Mechanism. And it provided some additional money to utilities to incentivize them to sell less of the product that they made money on. So you go back 20 years and we were doing this already, and we're kind of talking about this as though it's a new idea. Unfortunately, we've lost 20 years through the way the electricity industry was deregulated in New York State. It's nice that we're catching up now, but I just want to point out this is not a new idea.
I agreed, but we're trying to take that idea and expand it. There's still something that's on your utility bill called a system benefit charge that goes to pay for energy efficiency programs that are run by NYSERDA and the utilities now, and it also contributes to the renewable portfolio standard, which procures renewable energy for the state and its consumers. What we're trying to do is, if we were to increase that system benefit charge enough to pay for all the green energy and all the efficiency we need and all the system upgrades that we need, we believe that it would be unworkable. We can't just continue to increase that to meet the needs, the green power and clean power needs of the state. So we're part of the revolution of REV or the evolution of REV is to change those and help them leverage private investment. So we're going to facilitate more folks. Maybe they still get a little bit of a rebate or some sort of incentive to put in solar. Like right now, you can get, if you go through NYSERDA, they have a payment structure. We'd like it so instead of having to collect that money on a continuous basis and we get one solar panel, we want to make the whole system work better and more efficiently so that rebate or incentive that comes out of the program is no longer necessary because it's cost effective and a good decision for the customer because it's easy to do to install that solar panel on their own. And we'll get hopefully encourage more private investment and more private financing of these these products and resources. But you're right, we've been pushing this for a while. Now we're trying to push it in a different direction because we simply need it to scale up very quickly.
I want to speak to the incentive issue a little bit when I give my testimony.
Okay.
I just wanted people to know this whole idea of providing incentives to the utilities was something in the 1990s, it was already in place.
Okay, thank you.
10 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
How is this compared to what's being done right now, being charged for being attached to the system, but yet not using the system as it is? You're being charged just to have the wire come to the property and yet not using any electricity at this point in time. How does that work?
The question is, and I think I might need clarification, is there's a charge to be attached to the system,
Right.
even if you're not taking electricity off of it.
Right.
Now, do you have your own generation, or it's a closed apartment, or,
No, I have a piece of property
okay?
and I installed the electric line coming through, and I have not used any electricity yet. I intend to down in the future. But my point is, I get charged every month for being hooked up to the grid. And why is that allowed when you're not using electricity? And how is that going to work with the solar? I mean, we're going to, for backup, if we are with the utility still, and we have solar, but yet we're still attached to the line, the distributor. How do you work that out?
Okay, I think there's two questions there. Right now, they came and installed the meter at the empty lot, or
Yes.
the payment that you're making now
Yes.
may be amortization or broken out into individual payments for whatever costs they would have charged you for getting the line and setting up the meter. Or, I'm not sure that's 100%, and we'll probably take this one offline. You can call and close the account, and they won't charge you at all. But because they might come and take the meter, and then if you decide to reopen the account, they have to install the meter back. You may get charged for that. But if you don't have a use for the electricity and you think that'll extend over a period of time, you might want to call them and just close the account.
Okay, then the second question.
The second question is, if you have your own solar panels or other distributed generation, but you still want it to be attached to the grid for when your system doesn't work or is not producing as much energy as you might need as backup, how you pay for that. Right now, we have something that is called standby rates or a standby charge. The utility, because they have to maintain the system all the way up into your house and be ready for when your system's not working and you start to draw energy from the system, they charge you to maintain readiness. But that is that's been raised by many folks in comments and in discussions we've had as the charges that they actually are imposing are unworkable and a barrier for the installation of these systems. So we're looking at those to try to make them reflect more accurately the true cost of being ready to back you up. So that's something we're considering. Exactly how that will be structured or what those costs will end up being, I can't tell you right now. But we do expect there to be a charge for it. We expect it to be small enough to not be a barrier to the installation and the maintenance of these distributed resources that we're looking for folks to install.
Thank you.
So, I'm going to make a comment online. I'm sorry that I can't stay and make a comment now, but as you point out, yes, there are costs to change. People don't like it, and especially there are for-profit businesses who are making good money, big money, off of the way things are. So help me to understand where there is any incentive. I hear sort of almost setting things up so that the people who are already in charge of keeping things the same and making their big money are still in that position with everything I've heard so far. So could you explain where the incentive for the desperately needed move to renewables, where that's coming from?
That will be, the details of that will be decided in what we're calling Track 2. Track 1 is kind of the general policy and information approach. The Track 2 is actually where they're going to set the rates. Well, how does the utility get paid? When do they get to collect a dollar from a customer? And we're going to use the structure of those things to promote the green energy. They'll get paid more if their system carries more green energy than they would if it only carries fossil fuel.
I think kind of a grossly simplistic example of that might be that the commission could say, I'm certainly not saying this is anything that's specifically proposed currently or anything it would probably be something more complicated, but a very simplistic example would be to say, if you utility have an increase of 300 megawatts of renewable energy over the next 5 years, we will just give you a $10 million profit for that, but which will still save money for customers if that $10 million is less than what it would have cost to do upgrades otherwise. So that's very simplistic. The numbers are just completely made up, but it could be something as direct as a bonus payment like that. Which,
In emergency mode. You need to be in emergency mode.
And we keep emphasizing the commission. The commission does have oversight authority of the utilities, but a large part of what's going to drive this is customers. Customers who don't want to pay the utility for whatever reason anymore will install solar panels, and some of them will put batteries in so they don't need the utility as backup. So the utility has an incentive to keep that customer attached, so they can collect some sort of revenue from that customer as backup. So they'll have to do something to make it worthwhile, make it worth that customer's while to stay attached. Now, not every customer has the option to detach from the grid. Most of us don't, which is why the commission is here, and to make sure that and to facilitate more folks having more choices. So even if you are attached to the grid and you don't have the resources for your own solar panels, we're considering all sorts of community programs or common programs where, again, you have resource to the access to the benefits of those solar panels, even if they're not in your backyard.
I would just add that the issue that's going to be in front of the commission soon is going to be the overall issue of should New York State move forward with this program. And if the commission decides, yes, it should, then the utility, it's going to order the utilities to make many changes in how they do business. So it's not just a question of that there's a carrot out there. If you do it right, they're going to be required to put in place the mechanism that will allow customers and competitors to provide resources in their own way. And then it's the responsibility of the utilities and the platform to absorb all those resources and use them. So it will be a real kind of qualitative change if that is the way the commission decides.
And for good or bad, red is not the only thing going on at the department. We're all working on a lot of stuff. And here we have a few other things listed. The Clean Energy Fund is being considered in a separate proceeding, but clearly those programs feed into promoting clean energy and more efficiency. So we're looking at it comprehensively, but we are taking some of the issues and looking at them specifically, including the Clean Energy Fund, the assessment of the low-income programs. With getting to the scale that we want and with trying to stimulate and motivate markets, we understand that these markets may not be able to or may not be willing to serve all the customers that the utilities serve now. The Commission is well aware of that has not given up, in my conversations with them, the idea that the marketplace will produce good products and services for low income. But if they don't, there will be programs that are directed by the Commission, and there's programs for everyone. They're not going to drop off the face of the earth 6 months from now. There will be a transition period. And low income and community choice aggregation, whether that's for any level of income, are issues that we're looking at kind of in parallel with RED to try to address some of the concerns that have raised here that have been raised before, and we share. It's 3 o'clock, so I'm going to take one more question.
I think too, we've got that gentleman in the back's been waiting for a while.
Okay, so we'll take a question in the front first, and then...
Okay. You said repeatedly that you want to stimulate private investment. I think one of the beautiful examples in the Western Hemisphere in doing that in renewable energy is right across the river here in Ontario, Canada. And I recommend you go there tomorrow while you're here and look at the feed-in tariff that they instituted 6 years ago or so. That attracted investment from Samsung. Samsung came with $7 billion into Ontario. They're hiring expensive Canadian labor. Samsung could have hired very inexpensive Chinese labor for that $7 billion, but they didn't. They invested in Ontario, into people who get $30, $40 an hour. And why did they do that? They did that because there was a feed-in tariff. And a feed-in tariff is also common in about 70 or 80 or 90 other countries, first world countries, except for the United States. So I encourage the Public Service Commission to get their minds going, I won't say anything else, on this feed-in tariff.
We appreciate it. We are the Public Service Commission at its December session did open a specific proceeding to look at the future of net metering and net metering-like tariffs, which would include feed-in tariffs. And certainly one thing that I think will be very closely looked at in that proceeding is how feed-in tariffs are working in other countries that use them.
Is there a feed-in tariff working on that?
With LIPA, I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
Okay. Sir, yeah?
The major problem with getting the utilities out of the system is that they own the system. How has that been dealt with in other countries?
How do you divest a private holder of assets? You pay them. Well, in other countries, I don't know. In this country, generally, we pay them for it.
I'm not specifically aware of other countries where they have divested the utilities of private systems, even countries that I'm familiar with that do have kind of very, very advanced levels of renewables and energy efficiency, generally still have private ownership of utility systems, like Germany, for example. I'm not aware of every country, so there may be alternate examples, certainly, but I'm not sure that other countries have divested those sorts of things from their utilities.
Not only that, the European countries basically privatized their energy industries during the Thatcher years, and so 15 years ago, most European countries privatized what had been publicly owned companies. So that's the universe they're looking at now. But I'm sorry to say we really need to start the public statement here, and I hate to cut off discussion.
Yeah, we have to do the public statement hearing, which is the most important thing for you to get your views and opinions to the commissioners on the record. I'd like to stay in here and talk for the rest of the day, just to tell I like it. But here's the information on how to submit written comments. You can do so online. You can write them and put them in the old-fashioned mail, or you can actually call. I'll leave that up for a few minutes. These slides will be available. They might change a little bit by the time we do all these presentations, but more or less will be available on the Commission's website in the upcoming days and weeks. I expect sometime next week.
This same information is actually also on the back of the information sheets that they have at the front table, so you actually don't need to write down all the phone numbers and addresses. If you just grab one of those sheets, you'll have them.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Since we're short on time, we're going to get started right away with the more formal portion of the evening. So if our court reporter is ready, I call to order case 14M0101, Reforming the Energy Vision. My name is Julia Belowski. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to this proceeding. We have here today Commissioner Greg Sayer and Commissioner Diane Berman of the Public Service Commission. They are two of the 5 commissioners that sit on this body that will be making decisions in this proceeding. Today, anything that is said will be recorded verbatim and made part of the official record in this proceeding so that all of the commissioners will have the opportunity to see your input and to rely on it in making decisions in the future.
I want to emphasize that this is not either the beginning or the end of our process of getting public input. This proceeding began in April of 2014. We had large collaborative efforts. We've had stakeholder meetings. We've had technical conferences, opportunities to submit comments. And even if a decision comes out soon in this first phase, it certainly won't be the last. This is an iterative process that is designed to take time, and there will be further opportunities for public comment as we go along. Tonight, because first of all, thank you all for coming. This turnout is amazing, especially for an afternoon session. Unfortunately, because it's the afternoon session, we have another informational forum, which is to begin at 6 o'clock, which leaves us rather tight on time, given the number of cards I have, and knowing this number of cards, how long it took us to get through them last night in Syracuse. We know how much all of you have to say, and we want to hear it. But to be respectful for the number of people we have here, I'm going to ask you to limit your comments to just a few minutes if possible. Written comments can be submitted to us tonight. They can also be submitted using the instructions on the informational sheet in the back. I am not going to wave a red flag, but please be courteous of your companions, speak succinctly, and if you do go over 5 minutes, I will have to cut you off just to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak. Again, we'll have another public statement hearing at 7 p.m., so anybody who does not have an opportunity to speak, come back and speak then, but obviously I don't want everyone to have to wait that long. So we will do our best to move things along. So before we get started, I just want to give an opportunity for our commissioners to welcome you as well.
Hi folks, I'm Greg Sayre. I've been an upstater for 25 years, raised my family in Rochester. My primary goals in this proceeding, apart from keeping an eye on upstate, making sure it doesn't get too much of a focus down below the mid-Hudson, is to maintain the focus of our actions on the consumer, so that the consumer will be better off throughout all this. Not just to make what appears to be the economically correct decisions, but to make the decisions that are going to make people better off. And secondly, I recognize that we're not going to make the right decision in all of this great big nut that we are trying to chew at once. And as we make these steps, we have to be ready to pull back a little bit. And I have every intent that my decisions will be careful and incremental and collaborative.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. I've been on the commission since July of 2013. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. My husband is a lifelong New Yorker. And we have 2 children that we are raising here. And for me, I take my position very seriously and want to do what's right for New York. And I look forward to working with everyone on this process and coming up with solutions for New York. Okay, I will be using the registration cards that folks filled out in the order that we got them in order to call people up to speak. If you want to speak and you have not filled out one of these cards, you still may do so. Just go to the back in the room and fill out a card and they'll get it to me. And just to reiterate, this is your opportunity to say your piece on the record, which will be considered by the commission and staff, but this is not, there won't be any responses at this point. The question and answer session is limited to the informational session. So we're going to begin, and I'm going to call folks 2 at a time just to facilitate people moving down to the front. So we'll begin with Charlie Bowman, followed by Megan Maloney de Zaldivar.